I always thought it was impossible to mix love with revenge, until I discovered I was living exactly that. This isn't a common story about a relationship gone wrong. It's about how an extraordinary woman almost destroyed my $12 million company, made me make the most irrational decisions of my life, and then revealed that it was all part of a revenge plan orchestrated by my ex-girlfriend. My name is Richard, I'm 35 years old, and over the past 6 months I've lived the most intense and devastating experience of my life. Let me tell you how it all started. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. I always believed that business success was a matter of total focus, you know? At 35, I had built a financial consulting company in Miami that was making millions per year. My routine was simple. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., gym, office until 10 p.m., and repeat. There was no room for distractions, relationships, or anything that could take my attention away from what really mattered, making money. That's how I functioned. That's how I got where I was. And that's how I planned to continue. But then she arrived. Isabella Rodriguez, 28 years old, Harvard graduate, impeccable resume, and a presence that literally changed the energy of any room. When she walked into my office for the interview, I swear I felt like the air had gotten thicker. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic. She had that kind of beauty that doesn't scream, but whispers in a way you can't ignore. Wavy brown hair, green eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul, and a smile that conveyed confidence and mystery at the same time. The interview was supposed to last 30 minutes but stretched to almost 2 hours. Not because she was insecure or I was being too rigorous, but because the conversation simply flowed. She talked about market strategies with a passion I recognized in myself, but there was something more. A subtle sensuality in the way she articulated words, how she crossed her legs, how she maintained eye contact for a few seconds longer than necessary. I found myself wondering if she was doing this on purpose, or if it was just my imagination working overtime. When she left my office, I stood there for about 5 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. For the first time in years, I had felt something I couldn't categorize as professional. There was a tension in the air, a chemistry I hadn't experienced in a long time. I called HR the same day and said, "Hire Isabella Rodriguez. She starts Monday." It wasn't a rational decision based solely on technical competence, and I knew it. But at that moment, I didn't care about the reasons behind my choice. On her first day at the company, I invented 3 different meetings just to have excuses to see her. I told myself it was to monitor the new employee's adaptation, but the truth is, I was fascinated. Isabella had a unique way of expressing herself, mixing professionalism with a natural charm that made everyone around her more comfortable. The other employees liked her immediately, and I could see she had that rare gift of making people feel special when she talked to them. Comment below. Have you ever been through a situation where you met someone and felt an instant connection like this? But there were moments when I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't the typical look of a new employee trying to impress the boss. It was something deeper, more calculated. Sometimes when our eyes met during meetings, I felt like she was studying every reaction of mine, every movement, every word. It was disturbing and exciting at the same time. I began to wonder, was she also feeling this connection? Or was something else happening behind those penetrating green eyes? 3 weeks after Isabella's arrival, I could no longer pretend that this was just a passing attraction. You know when you try to convince yourself that you're in control of a situation, but deep down you've already completely lost your way? That's exactly what was happening to me. I, who had always had self-control as my greatest virtue, suddenly found myself creating pathetic excuses to pass by her department. "I'll just check how the Johnson & Associates report is going," I'd tell myself, when I really just wanted to see her working, concentrated, lightly biting her lower lip when she was thinking about something complex. The obsession started subtly, almost imperceptibly. I noticed I was arriving earlier at the office, hoping she'd be one of the first to arrive too. When she got in the elevator, my heart raced like I was a teenager in love. I memorized her schedule. She always arrived at 8:15 a.m., had lunch at 12:30 p.m., and had the habit of staying an extra 15 minutes organizing her desk before leaving. Pathetic? Totally. But I couldn't stop. It was like she had awakened a part of me I didn't even know existed. The nights became a personal hell. I'd lie in bed in my brickle penthouse, staring at the ceiling and thinking about her. They weren't just physical fantasies, although those existed too and were intense. I found myself imagining conversations we could have, places we could visit together, what it would be like to wake up next to her. This kind of thinking was completely new to me. I had always been pragmatic about relationships, casual encounters, no commitment, no emotional involvement, but Isabella was changing all the rules of the game. During meetings, I constantly lost focus. While others talked about financial projections and growth strategies, I was watching how she took notes, how she tilted her head when she was concentrated, how she smiled subtly when she heard something that pleased her. More than once, someone had to repeat a question directed at me because I was completely absorbed in watching Isabella. My partners began to notice that I wasn't as sharp as usual. "Are you okay, Richard? You seem kind of distant lately," Marcus commented during an executive meeting. The worst part was the moments when she showed genuine interest in talking to me. She had a way of asking questions about my personal life that seemed casual, but I felt there was real curiosity behind it. "How do you manage to maintain this work pace without getting tired?" she asked once, while we were organizing some contracts in the conference room. The question itself was simple, but the way she looked at me while waiting for the answer, it was like she really wanted to know me beyond the professional facade. These moments gave me a feeling of closeness I hadn't experienced in years, but there was something more disturbing happening. I was starting to make business decisions thinking about how they would affect my relationship with Isabella. When an opportunity came up to send someone to a conference in New York, I immediately thought of nominating her. Not because it was the best strategic choice, but because I wanted to show that I trusted her and valued her work. When we had to reorganize departments, I found myself thinking about how to place her area closer to my office. These small, unconscious manipulations were signs that I was losing my objectivity. My ability to separate personal from professional that had always been my superpower in business. The line was crossed on a rainy Friday in October. It was almost 9 p.m. and most employees had already left, but Isabella was still in the office finishing a presentation for an important client. I could have gone home, but I invented some excuse to stay too. "I still have some contracts to review," I lied to myself. Actually, I just wanted to be near her, even if it was just sharing the same space in silence. There was something romantically cinematic about that moment. The rain hitting the 20th floor windows, the city lights creating a perfect setting, and the two of us there, alone. When she finally saved the file and stretched in her chair, I offered to take her home. "You don't need to bother, Richard. I can call an Uber," she said. But there was something in her tone that suggested she wanted to accept. During the drive to her apartment in Coral Gables, the conversation flowed differently. We were no longer talking about work, deadlines, or clients. We were talking about dreams, about what motivated us, about the scars we carried from past relationships. She mentioned that she had come out of a serious relationship a few months ago and was focusing on her career. I confided in her that it had been years since I truly connected with someone. When we arrived at her building, neither of us made any move to get out of the car. The conversation continued, but now there was palpable tension in the air. I could smell her perfume, something floral and sophisticated that perfectly matched her personality. Our eyes met for a moment that seemed to last forever, and I knew she was feeling the same thing I was. "Want to come up for some wine?" she asked, and although we knew that invitation meant much more than just a drink, I accepted without hesitation. In that moment, all the voices of reason in my head were silenced by desire. Her apartment was a perfect reflection of her personality, elegant but cozy, sophisticated but with personal touches that showed who she really was. While she opened the wine, I observed the photos on the shelf, the books scattered on the coffee table, the details that revealed her intimacy. When she handed me the glass, our fingers touched, and it was like an electric current ran through my entire body. We could no longer pretend this was just a casual interaction between boss and employee. The kiss happened naturally, intense, full of all the tension accumulated over the past weeks. What happened that night was beyond any physical experience I had ever had. It wasn't just desire being satisfied. It was a deep connection, an intimacy I didn't know was possible to experience. Isabella was passionate, present, engaging in a way that made me completely forget the outside world. Every touch, every whisper, every moment of closeness seemed to carry a meaning that went far beyond the physical. For the first time in years, I felt completely vulnerable with someone, and at the same time, completely safe. The next morning, while we had coffee on her balcony, I knew our relationship had changed forever. We could no longer pretend we were just work colleagues. There was an intimacy between us that was impossible to hide. Do you think workplace relationships can work? Share your experiences in the comments. But even knowing I was entering dangerous territory, I couldn't regret it. Isabella had awakened a part of me I didn't even know existed, and I was completely addicted to this feeling. What I didn't imagine is that this would be just the first step toward a fall I could never have predicted. What started as small, questionable decisions quickly turned into an avalanche of catastrophic choices. 3 months after our first intimate encounter, I could no longer distinguish between what was good for the company and what was motivated by my desire to impress Isabella. She had casually mentioned that she always dreamed of visiting Japan, so I created a business opportunity in Tokyo that cost the company over $200,000 and ultimately generated no concrete return. We spent an incredible week together, but it was the first of many investments that my blind passion made me believe were strategic. The obsession with pleasing her intensified when I realized Isabella showed interest in luxury lifestyle. She didn't ask for anything directly. In fact, she was very subtle, but she made comments about expensive restaurants, sports cars, or jewelry she saw in magazines. Each comment of hers planted a seed in my head. If I can provide this for her, she'll see how successful I am, how well I can take care of her. I started using the corporate card for dinners at Michelin restaurants, bought her a Cartier to celebrate a promotion, and even rented a yacht for a weekend in Key West. Each extravagant gesture was justified in my mind as an investment in our relationship. But the worst mistake was when she suggested I should expand the company into the cryptocurrency market. "Richard, you're so smart and visionary. I'm sure if you entered this market now, you'd be a pioneer," she said one night while we were lying in bed after an intense evening. At the time, the crypto market was booming, but it was extremely volatile, and I didn't have enough technical knowledge to navigate these waters. Even so, the confidence she showed in me, the admiration in her eyes when she talked about my ability to see opportunities others don't see, made me invest $2 million of the company's money in digital currencies without doing adequate risk analysis. For 6 months, everything seemed to be working out. Cryptocurrencies were rising, Isabella was increasingly affectionate and admiring, and I felt like I was the king of the world. She began to participate more actively in company decisions, not officially, but her opinions carried enormous weight in my choices. When she suggested a new type of client to focus on, I redirected the entire commercial strategy. When she commented that an employee seemed kind of negative, I considered firing him. I had created a situation where Isabella, even without realizing it, was indirectly controlling the direction of my company. The fall was quick and brutal. Within weeks, the crypto market plummeted, and I lost almost 80% of the investment. Simultaneously, some big clients began canceling contracts because our new commercial approach wasn't aligned with their needs. The company I had built over a decade was bleeding money alarmingly. I had to fire employees, sell equipment, and even refinance my own house to cover operational costs. The most painful thing was knowing that all of this could have been avoided if I had maintained my rationality and discipline. But what haunted me most were the employees' looks. People who trusted me, who had families to support, who believed in the company's stability. I saw disappointment, worry, and in some cases veiled anger. Marcus, my partner for 8 years, pulled me aside for a serious conversation. "Richard, what's happening to you? You've always been the most centered of us too. Where did these crazy decisions come from?" I couldn't tell him the truth, that I had put everything at risk because of a passion that had completely clouded my judgment. Shame and guilt were consuming me, but I still couldn't see that Isabella might have some responsibility in all this. The truth appeared in the most unexpected way possible. It was a Tuesday in March, and I was in my office trying to find a way to save what was left of the company when my assistant informed me that I had a call from Samantha Williams, my ex-girlfriend from 2 years ago. Samantha and I had a troubled relationship that ended quite unpleasantly. She accused me of being cold, calculating, and incapable of truly loving. We hadn't spoken in over 18 months, so her call left me curious and, at the same time, uncomfortable. "Richard, I need to talk to you. It's about Isabella," she said, and my blood instantly ran cold. Samantha asked to meet at a discreet cafe in Wynwood, away from my social and professional circle. When I saw her, I noticed she was different, more tense, with deep, dark circles, as if she hadn't slept well in weeks. "I couldn't live with this weight on my conscience anymore," she began, and I already knew that what was coming would change my life forever. She told me that Isabella was her best friend since college, that they had maintained contact even after our breakup, and that Isabella knew all the intimate details of our relationship. What I thought was coincidence, Isabella working exactly in my field, appearing at my company, showing interest in me, was actually a meticulously crafted plan. "She told me you were completely obsessed with her, that you were making irrational decisions, spending company money like water," Samantha continued, and each word was like a stab to my chest. "At first I thought it was just small revenge, you know? Make you fall in love and then dump you. But when she told me about the crypto investments, about how much you were losing, I realized things had gotten out of control." My mind was racing, trying to process all the information. Every intimate moment I had shared with Isabella, every vulnerability I had exposed, had been reported to my ex-girlfriend as part of a revenge plan. What destroyed me most was discovering how they had planned every detail. Isabella had spent months studying my behavior through Samantha's reports, identifying my weaknesses and blind spots. She knew exactly what type of woman attracted me, what kind of approach would work on me, and even how to plant suggestions that would make me make harmful decisions. "She's very intelligent, Richard. Much more than I imagined," Samantha admitted. "She turned everything into a psychological game. Every caress, every word of support, every moment of intimacy was calculated to make you more vulnerable, more dependent on her. When I got home that night, I was completely devastated. It wasn't just the discovery of betrayal. It was the realization that I had been manipulated so sophisticatedly that I couldn't even distinguish what had been real from what had been acting. All the memories I kept as special, all the moments I considered genuine, now seemed contaminated by lies. I felt like a complete idiot, a 35-year-old man who had been deceived like a naive teenager. The company was going bankrupt, my reputation was destroyed, and now I discovered that the only relationship that had made me feel alive in recent years was an elaborate farce. But what confused me was Samantha's reaction. She didn't seem satisfied with the revenge. In fact, she seemed genuinely regretful and worried. "I didn't know she would take it so far," she repeated several times during our conversation. "I just wanted you to feel a little of what I felt when you discarded me as if I were nothing. This made me realize that maybe there were more layers to this story, that maybe even Isabella hadn't predicted how things would evolve. The question that wouldn't leave my mind was, did Isabella ever feel something real for me at some point? Or was I just a target she had executed with surgical precision? Now I needed to understand the origin of all this." Samantha, seeing my state of shock, decided to tell me the whole story from the beginning. It all started 3 months after our breakup, when she and Isabella met at a bar in South Beach for one of those typical conversations between friends about failed relationships. "I was in a very bad place in my life, Richard," she explained to me with teary eyes. "You had broken up with me so coldly, so calculatingly, as if I were just an administrative problem you had solved. I felt humiliated, used, as if all the moments we lived meant nothing to you." Isabella, who had always been an attentive listener and loyal friend, was genuinely indignant about the way I had treated Samantha. "She said that men like you needed to learn a lesson," Samantha continued, "that you thought you were untouchable, superior, and that someone should show you how painful it is to be discarded after completely giving yourself to someone." What started as a venting conversation between friends quickly turned into a conspiracy when Isabella suggested she could teach me a lesson in a way I would never forget. The initial idea was simple: make me fall madly in love and then abandon me so I would feel the same pain I had caused Samantha. Their plan was frighteningly detailed. Isabella spent weeks researching me, my company, my habits, my preferences. She studied my LinkedIn profile, read articles I had published, and even talked to people who knew me professionally to better understand my personality. Samantha provided intimate information about what attracted me in a woman, my emotional weak points, and even details about my sex life that made me feel completely exposed and violated. "She created a perfect persona to seduce you," Samantha admitted. "Every aspect of her personality that attracted you was carefully constructed based on what I told her about you." Isabella's entry into my company was no coincidence. She had specifically applied for a position she knew I would be involved in the selection process for. Her impeccable resume was real, but the motivation to work with me was purely vindictive. During the first months, she reported every interaction of ours to Samantha in minute detail. "She told me how you reacted when she wore certain clothes, how your eyes changed when she smiled a certain way, how you got uncomfortable when she complimented you," Samantha revealed. "It was like I was a lab rat being observed and manipulated without knowing it." The most disturbing aspect was how they had planned my financial destruction. Isabella didn't just want to make me suffer emotionally. She wanted to ruin my life completely. The suggestions about crypto investments, the pressure to expand the company, the excessive spending she subtly encouraged, all were part of a plan to make me lose not just my heart, but also my financial stability. "She said men like you only learn when they lose what they value most, power and money," Samantha explained. "She wanted you to feel the same vulnerability she thought you had made me feel." But there was a twist that not even Samantha had foreseen. In recent weeks, Isabella had started acting strangely. She stopped reporting our intimate encounters in detail, began questioning whether the plan hadn't gone too far, and even suggested that maybe they should stop. "She told me you weren't exactly as I had described," Samantha revealed. "That you were more vulnerable, more human than she expected. I think she started feeling guilty, or maybe she started feeling something real for you." This revelation left me even more confused. If Isabella was really developing feelings for me, did that mean at least part of what we experienced together was genuine? Or was it just another layer of manipulation? After the devastating conversation with Samantha, I needed to confront Isabella. But before that, I started rethinking every moment of the past months, looking for signs I had missed. And they were there, subtle but present. There were nights when she was too quiet after our intimate encounters, as if she was struggling with something internal. Moments when she looked at me with an expression I interpreted as affection, but now realized could have been guilt. I remembered a specific occasion when she had started telling me something about her past, but stopped mid-sentence and abruptly changed the subject. "Forget it. It's not important," she had said, but I saw tears forming in her eyes. There were also occasions when she tried, almost imperceptibly, to discourage me from some more drastic decisions. When I mentioned I was thinking about selling my beach house to cover the company's losses, she said, "Are you sure? Sometimes things resolve themselves in ways we don't expect." At the time, I thought she was being optimistic, but now I realize it might have been remorse. It was as if she was trying to subtly sabotage her own destruction plan without being obvious enough to raise suspicions. What intrigued me most was how she had started showing genuine jealousy. At a company party, when a female client flirted with me shamelessly, Isabella was visibly uncomfortable. She didn't say anything at the time, but later in the car she made a sarcastic comment about how some women don't know how to respect boundaries. This kind of reaction didn't make sense if she was just manipulating me. Why would she care about other women if I was just a target? Unless unless she had really started developing genuine feelings for me. I also remembered how Isabella had changed physically in recent months. She was thinner, with more pronounced dark circles, and sometimes I caught her lost in thought, with a melancholic expression that didn't match the confident woman I had met. When I asked if everything was okay, she always smiled and said it was just work fatigue. But now I understood that maybe she was carrying the weight of a lie that had grown far beyond what she expected. The plan that was supposed to be simple revenge had turned into a complex situation where she was also being consumed. The most significant turning point happened the week before my discovery. Isabella had suggested that I should look for an independent financial consultant to help reorganize the company's finances. "You're very intelligent, Richard, but sometimes an outside perspective can help," she said. At the time, I found it strange because she usually reinforced my confidence in making decisions alone. But now I realized she was trying to protect me, trying to give me a way out of the situation she herself had created. It was like she was fighting between loyalty to her friend and something deeper that had been born between us. What disturbed me most was the possibility that Isabella was suffering as much as I was. If she had really developed genuine feelings, then she was living an internal hell, in love with someone she was destroying as part of a revenge plan, torn between loyalty to a friend and a love that shouldn't exist. I wondered if she slept well at night, if she felt guilt every time she touched me, if she questioned whether there could be a future for us if she confessed everything. This possibility left me even more confused, because it meant that at least part of what we experienced was real, that at some point in the middle of all this lie, something true had been born between us. After 3 days processing all the information Samantha had given me, I knew I needed to confront Isabella. But how do you face someone you love knowing they may have deliberately destroyed your life? How do you separate what was real from what was calculated when the two mix so complexly? I arranged to meet her at a discreet restaurant in Coral Gables, away from the office, away from anywhere that could associate us professionally. When she arrived wearing a blue dress I had always said looked beautiful on her, I felt my heart break. She was more beautiful than ever, but there was also a sadness in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. "Isabella, I need to ask you a question, and please, be honest with me," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you know Samantha Williams?" Her reaction was instant and devastating. Her face lost all color, her eyes widened, and she literally recoiled in her chair as if she had been punched. For a few seconds, which seemed like an eternity, we stared at each other in silence. I saw fear, guilt, relief, and something that seemed to be true love passing through her eyes. "How did you find out?" she asked in an almost inaudible voice. And at that moment, I knew everything Samantha had told me was true. What happened next was one of the most intense and painful conversations of my life. Isabella began to cry, not a dramatic cry, but silent tears that seemed to carry months of accumulated guilt. "Richard, I don't even know where to begin," she said, trembling. "When I planned this, you were just a name to me. Samantha had told me about you two, about how you had broken up with her. And I really believed you were a cold, calculating man who deserved to learn a lesson." She explained that she had agreed to participate in the plan because she genuinely wanted to protect her friend, but that she never imagined things would evolve the way they did. "But when I met you personally, when we started talking, I realized you weren't the person I imagined," she continued. "You were vulnerable, funny, had depth, and when we became intimate, my God, Richard, what I felt for you was more real than anything I had ever experienced in my life." She told me she had tried several times to get out of the plan, but didn't know how to do it without destroying her friendship with Samantha and without telling me a truth that could destroy me. I was trapped in a situation I had created myself, in love with someone I was hurting, hating myself for every day I spent lying to you. The most devastating confession came when she told me she had stopped reporting our encounters to Samantha 2 months ago. "I couldn't share our intimacy with her anymore," Isabella revealed. "Every moment we spent together had become sacred to me. I could no longer treat our relationship as part of a game." She also admitted that she had tried to subtly protect me from the riskiest financial decisions, but didn't know how to be more direct without raising suspicions. I was torn between protecting you and not exposing what I had done. It was an internal hell I didn't know how to resolve. But what touched me most was when she said, "Richard, I know you'll probably never be able to forgive me, and I understand that. But I need you to know that I love you." It wasn't part of the plan, it wasn't something I expected, but it happened. And now I don't know how to live knowing I destroyed the only person I truly loved in my life. At that moment, looking at her, I saw the woman who had fallen in love with me as much as I had fallen in love with her. I saw someone who was suffering as much as I was, who was facing the same dilemma: how to separate true love from a foundation built on lies. The question that wouldn't be silenced was the love that had been born between us strong enough to survive the betrayal that had created it? 3 weeks had passed since that conversation at the restaurant, and I was still processing everything. Isabella had resigned the day after our confrontation, leaving only a formal letter saying she had personal issues that required her immediate departure. We hadn't spoken since then. She didn't respond to my messages, didn't answer my calls, and when I passed by her apartment, I discovered she had moved. It was as if she had simply disappeared from my life, leaving only the consequences of what had happened between us. During those 3 weeks, I oscillated between anger, longing, love, and despair. Some days I woke up hating Isabella for manipulating me, for destroying my company, for turning my life into chaos. Other days, I felt a longing for her that was almost physical, remembering the genuine moments we had, the deep conversations, the connection I knew had been real. The doubt that consumed me was, how much of what we experienced was true? Was it possible to build something solid on a foundation of lies? The company was slowly recovering. With the help of a financial consultant, ironically following the suggestion Isabella had given me, I managed to restructure the debts and find investors who believed in the business's long-term viability. It would still take years to fully recover the losses, but at least now I had a realistic plan. Marcus had started trusting me again, and the employees who remained at the company seemed renewed with the new direction we had taken. Professionally, I was finding my way back, but emotionally, I was a wreck. I couldn't relate to other women because I compared them all to Isabella. I couldn't fully trust anyone because I was still processing how I had been deceived so easily. And mainly, I couldn't stop thinking about whether she was okay, whether she was suffering as much as I was, whether she thought about me as frequently as I thought about her. Samantha had told me that Isabella had also cut contact with her, that she was dealing alone with the consequences of what she did. This made me think that maybe she was punishing herself as much as I was being punished. It was on a Friday, exactly 1 month after our last conversation, that I discovered where Isabella was. By chance, I saw a LinkedIn post from her announcing a new position at a consulting company in New York. In the photos, she was smiling, looked professional and confident, but I knew her well enough to notice that the smile didn't reach her eyes. There was a melancholy there that I recognized because I saw the same expression in the mirror every day. At that moment, I knew she was suffering as much as I was, that she probably thought about me with the same intensity I thought about her. And then, that same night, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard her voice. "Richard?" she said, and I could hear the hesitation, the fear, the hope in her voice. I'm in New York. I got a new job, a new life, but I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop thinking about what we could have been if everything had started differently." There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "I know I don't have the right to ask you this, but do you think there's any possibility of us starting over? No lies, no games, just the two of us trying to figure out if what we feel is real enough to overcome how it all began?" I held the phone with trembling hands, my heart racing. That was the question I had asked myself thousands of times during the past month. Was the love that had been born between us strong enough to survive the betrayal that had created it? Could we rebuild something true from the ruins of what had happened? Or would there always be a shadow of distrust that would make any future together impossible? Isabella, I began, but the words wouldn't come out. My phone screen showed the call was still active, but neither of us said anything. It was as if we were suspended in time, waiting for one of us to have enough courage to decide both our futures. Do you think I should give Isabella a second chance? Is it possible to rebuild a relationship after such a betrayal? Or are some things unforgivable, even when there's true love involved? If this story made you reflect on your own relationships, if it made you question your own certainties about love and forgiveness, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos.